So welcome. We are thrilled to be able to share with you the wisdom of City Councilman Blaine Griffin. As you all know, Blaine represents Ward 6, and he has quite ably done so since 2017. Prior to that, he was with the Cleveland Community Relations Board. He has a long history of working tirelessly in Cleveland's neighborhoods, addressing so many issues and building community as he went along. When he was with the Community Relations Board, he focused a lot of his energies around addressing issues of violence and crime in our neighborhoods. He currently serves as Majority Whip, and his richly diverse area that he serves includes Fairfax, Larchmere, Little Italy, Woodland Hills, and parts of several other Cleveland neighborhoods. He chairs the Health and Human Services Committee and has worked very closely with Daniel Cohn and the Mount Sinai Foundation to address the issues of lead in our city. He is the proud father of 3 sons. He is a German Marshall Fellow, and he is a proud alum of Leadership Cleveland 2014. Blaine, thanks so much for being with us, and I'll let you take it away.
Thank you so much, Marianne, and thank you to all of the Leadership Cleveland grads. And I'm here representing class number LC 2014, the most significant class that has ever come out of Leadership Cleveland. But then also to all of your guests near and far, thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this series. I would like to just thank you for allowing you to tell you what I've been doing on my summer vacation. I joke with you all to say that because that's what some people believe it is, but if you really know the life of a council person, the summertime is probably the most busy season that we have. It's the time when we actually have to execute a plan. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about today, is the plan that myself and many members of our council people have been doing. And the plan is an acronym for policy, leadership, advocacy, as well as new, because we know that it's going to be a new normal once we get finished dealing with this COVID-19 crisis. So I know that this whole series and the whole Leadership Cleveland model is to inspire, connect, and transform. So I hope to try to do all 3 of those things in the brief remarks that I make, and then I'll do Q&A because I know you have a lot of Q&A for me. First of all, is policy. We've been working very closely, as you mentioned, to continue to move forward our aggressive lead-safe Cleveland policy. So we've been really looking forward to working closely. We continue to have meetings with the coalition, the Lead Safe Cleveland Coalition, because now even more than ever, we're concerned with so many children being confined in their homes if they have a lot of exposure to lead, which is something we're monitoring very closely and something that we're working very closely to try to set up. We've also have, by sitting on that board, we have also secured a lead safe auditor that really is in charge to help us understand our housing stock in the city of Cleveland, as well as our lead safe resource center, and also the tools that we need to start doing some of the grants and low interest loans in order for landlords and homeowners to repair their homes. So those have been ongoing. I have a colleague, Kevin Conwell, that often says we should manage our policy. And one of the things that we always do is to try to make sure that we didn't just pass this and then kick the can down the road. We want to make sure that we continue to look forward to reducing and eliminating lead exposure for children in the city of Cleveland. We also, as this city council, has really taken a leadership role on housing insecurity, really trying to prevent housing insecurity. One of the things that we did immediately in our last session of meeting at Cleveland City Council is we announced a moratorium. We passed a resolution for a moratorium on COVID-19 related evictions. So anybody that couldn't get a paycheck or couldn't survive or pay their rent because of COVID-19, we've asked for a moratorium. Now, a resolution does have strong standing with council, but it's not an ordinance. But right now, through working with Housing Court and others, we have no cases being heard right now for evictions, and a lot of that is due to everyone wanting us to take the first step and a bold step as council to make sure that we pass the resolution stating that we would discontinue any COVID-19 related moratorium. COVID-19 evictions for homes. The other thing that I will tell you that we were just starting to do, which was illuminated with this COVID-19 response, is I actually introduced a piece of legislation declaring racism as a public health crisis. And by making this declaration, according to CDC guidelines, whenever you make a recommendation that you declare something a public health crisis, you now have to put a strategy in place in order to mitigate that crisis or alleviate it or eliminate it altogether. So the whole goal with this racism as a public health declaration gives us the tools and the backgrounds to look at equity related issues. We've seen a lot of health disparities. We've seen a lot of socioeconomic disparities and other disparities that were illuminated with this COVID-19. Immediately, when I began to look at the numbers, and I encourage everybody to look at the Cleveland Department of Public Health website, and you start to see that communities of color, poor minority communities in the city of Cleveland were starting to be disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. And that's one of the reasons why we put this resolution in place. We're working with all the legacy organizations, the NAACP, Urban League, the United Way. We're also working closely with YWCA, as well as First Year Cleveland and Bernie Carrigan, Dr. Arthur James, and others in that space in order to really try to make sure we have something strong in place, declaring racism as a public health declaration. And just to give it and put it in context, in cities like Milwaukee and Milwaukee County and other places that have worked with the GARE, Government Accountability for Race and Equity, national model, these places already had data sets that made sure that they collected the statistics to see if there were disproportionate impacts due to social determinants of health in major cities. That's one of the reasons why we really think that this is an important step to really take. The next thing that I would talk to you about is leadership. One of the things that people don't realize is council are considered leaders in our community. So whereas a lot of people would love for us to sit behind a desk and pass laws and policies, a lot of council is being interactive, being accessible, making sure that we do things that are outside of our scope of work and outside of what the charter might have us do, but we know it's necessary for our community, and we know that our community needs us for this. Myself, along with many of my colleagues, have done a lot of food drives, have done a lot of senior well checks, and have done other things to really work closely in our community for families in distress and others. One of the things that I would tell you is that as a council person, the first person that many people call for information, whether it's federal, state, or local, is their council person. So I actually had to understand the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, and some of those other federal programs, even when it came to stimulus, because quite frankly, people would ask us, am I getting a stimulus check, or who qualifies for stimulus checks? So we have to be well versed in those kind of things, because we get even more calls when we have times like this right now in our community. I will tell you that we have done several Zoom meetings. I've had a Zoom meeting with the residents several times in the ward, as well as working closely to have a business roundtable Zoom meeting that we could work closely with our small businesses in the community as well. So those have been going very well. We've written letters and supported over 250, and it's moving probably after the weekend up to about 300 small businesses that we've convened and supported, and really trying to make sure that we take advantage of the tool that we put in place at the City of Cleveland, that Mayor Jackson put in place at the City of Cleveland, so that we can offer up to $10,000 for small businesses in the City of Cleveland. We continue to work with development projects and resurfacing projects. One of the things that I will tell you is that when we do development, and unfortunately, we've lost two major developments because of COVID-19, and then one because we just lost out on a federal grant. But these developments are still moving forward. And a lot of that, you really have to be hands-on because a lot of these businesses don't understand how to operate through City Hall. So we work closely with those businesses in order to make sure that we continue to move those developments along. The best thing I'll tell you with leadership is that we've had a great partnership with clinic, work and Meyer Supermarket in order to do cleaning supplies and hygiene products for a lot of the families in need. As you know, the stores were bare and the shelves were bare. A lot of people couldn't get cleaning supplies, so we actually worked with Meyer, who donated a truckload of cleaning supplies, and then worked with Cleveland Clinic, with Dr. Mahalovich, Vicki Johnson, and that entire team, and Fairfax Renaissance Development to make sure that we were able to provide cleaning products and food for families throughout the Ward 6 area. The next I would tell you about is advocacy. That's the third plank in the plan. And the biggest thing that we're working on right now is census. Some neighborhoods that we serve, and I tell people I have a Dickensian model of a ward where there's affluent areas that do very well, but then there's also some areas that are distressed. And one of the things that we've been really trying to do is really drive home the fact that we need to fill out the census forms. Right now, in certain areas of the city of Cleveland, mine included, there are some census tracts that have less than 25 people that have filled out the census. That will be disastrous if we do not advocate for more people to fill out the census. So we've actually been doing different tools and other things in order to really encourage people to fill out the census and help educate people on why it's so important to fill out that census. Today, I was part of a that many of you probably seen when I joined Liz Brown, Columbus council person, Mayor Nan Whaley, Dayton mayor, as well as Amelia Sykes, the minority leader of the House. We're asking for voter reform. We're asking to make sure that everyone can have they shouldn't have to have two steps. We should just send a mail envelope so that people could just mail in their vote and have the opportunity to do that. So we're working closely with that. I do have to slip in that I am the top delegate for Biden. I know that we don't always get political in Leadership Cleveland, but that has found a way to take up a lot of time because we have to do a lot of things online too closely with Vice President and his team in order to really advocate and make sure that everybody understands what's so important about it. The last thing that I share, and I'll take questions, Marianne, is the new normal. With every crisis, we have an opportunity to come out of this new, revived, resilient Cleveland. And that's what I'm looking forward to. But we have to address some of those things that I mentioned, like race, like social determinant. And one of the things that I would tell you that has become the new normal, that's something that we have to address in mainly urban environments, is access to broadband. We have 2/3 of our home in the city of Cleveland that do not have broadband. When you have doctor's appointments that are being handled online now, I don't know about you, but the last 2 doctor's appointments have been online. I didn't know that they could check blood pressure over the internet yet, but I still come up with it. But somehow, all the doctor's appointments are on the internet. A lot of people work from home. And then most importantly, when you have school, where a lot of people have their home time, and they don't have tools at home, and because the libraries now, which usually do a great job of trying to heal the digital divide, and I think my good friend Felton Thomas is on right now, the head of the Cleveland Public Library, but now these children are obligated to come home and do these projects, and we need to make sure that we do a better job of doing broadband. In my opinion, I think at some point in time, we really need to look at broadband being a utility in order to make sure fairness and equity that every household should be able to have. My colleague, Carrie McCormick, has some great ideas about how we can do street diets and how we can close off streets so that we give our restaurant industry a boost and a shot in the arm. I support him in those efforts. But all in all, we want to be innovative when we come out of this. We want to be creative. When we talk about the new normal, we want to make sure that we start to look at the future of work, the future of manufacturing, the new revolution in workforce. And that's going to be online. That's going to be making sure that people have the digital tools. And in order to look at Industry 4.0, we need to make sure that we come out of this with the tools in place in order to be able to compete nationally as well as globally. So I think that we have a lot of opportunities. This council, not just myself, all of my colleagues have been in the trenches. We have not taken this time off or have taken it lightly. We're there to basically pass policy, provide leadership, be an advocate where we need to be an advocate, and then also explore the new normal. And that's the plan that we've been executing as a council. So once again, thank you. I'll take questions that anybody has. Hopefully I can answer them. If I can't, then I'll be sure to get the answer to you.
Councilman, thank you so much for sharing with us and giving us the plan as you put it out there. We've had a couple of questions come in, and I would encourage folks, if they have questions, to please put those in the chat, and we'll be happy to get to those for the councilman. So Blaine, you talked a little bit about this revived, resilient Cleveland, which is a great phrase that I really, really like and hope that we use moving forward. I'm interested to see what's your vision for what this revived, resilient Cleveland looks like, and how can we as Clevelanders best seize this opportunity to move it forward?
Well, I think first of all, we have to recognize where we have deficiencies and weaknesses. The reason that I mentioned Industry 4.0 is because, in my opinion, I think it's inexcusable that we can't make Q-tips and we can't make other type of medical products, that those have become traded sector jobs that has been that have gone overseas. Now we're at the whim overseas. I really feel bad for Governor Cuomo when I looked, and I think they paid about $300 million or somewhere in that for some equipment from a foreign country, and literally didn't get and are still $1 million of the government's money that's gone now. So I think that we have to bring some of those jobs back on shore, back to the system. We have to recognize the social determinants of health, where we have areas of our community that have low life expectancy, high infant mortality, a lot of exposure to lead. And this is basically a crescent-shaped C on most of the near west side and most of the south. And I think that we have to come out of this recognizing where we have efficiencies and where we can build upon our strengths. I do think that one of the things that Clinton really needs to look at right now is how we need to bring back our manufacturing sector into their city. Because it's very tough for people to get out to the suburban areas and some of the far ring suburban areas for work. We need to find a way to bring some of the things back here, as well as try to make sure that we eliminate a lot of these disparities to stop some of us from succeeding.
Thank you. We had a great question come in from Ronnie Dunn. And Ronnie, if you want to unmute, I'd be happy to have you ask that question to the councilman.
Sure. Good
Hey,
afternoon.
Doc.
Hey, how are you?
I'm going
Councilman
good.
Griffin,
Doc, you?
I'm well, staying safe and staying busy as well, though. Councilman, can you tell us what is the status of lead testing for children in the city? And secondly, what is the status, or what is the city doing to address the digital divide that you described? Thank you.
Okay, that's two great questions. I'll start out with the lead. To be honest with you, there's going to be a committee that is going to be set from the city of Cleveland in order to ramp up testing. There's two types of ways that medical professionals kind of look at lead exposure. One is a screening, basically just a tool that, that parents fill out and to make sure that they actually have a tool in place to kind of, show how much at risk a lot of their young people may need to be. The other one is venous draw. They actually test the blood. If that screening tube comes back to say they may be high risk of lead, then that's when they actually get tests to see if they're at 5 EBO or I would tell you that I think that people have looked at that process as a canary in a coal mine, and that by the time you do the test, because any amount of lead that a child is exposed to is that it's often too late. It's a canary in the coal mine strategy. That's why we move more towards a housing strategy that's dealing with a public health crisis. That's why we're asking landlords to make sure that they get their homes certified as lead safe every 3 years or so in order to make sure that their homes are habitable. But I'll tell you that that committee, Dr. Dunn, is going to be working a lot on that. There's actually barriers where it comes to testing. If my doctor's office is in one location and they tell me to have it across town to go get my lead test, my lead exposure test, the likelihood of me being able to do that is very low. But we have to overcome barriers as well. So we have a committee work closely on how to revamp and work with the hospitals around lead exposure testing. But that's something that's always been a concern. If I would have my others, I think we should have universal testing at 18 months and 2 years. But a lot of the medical professionals tell me that that still might be inefficient because of other transiency and other stuff like that. So, Doc, we are working. There is a committee that's going to be assigned, and part of the legislation that we put in place in 749, 2019, was to put a committee to that. The digital divide, although it's a paltry number, one of the things that our committee administration for is that they did put $500,000 towards trying to make sure that we could leverage what the Cleveland Metropolitan School District to provide hotspots and other type of tools in order to get low income folks access to broadband and to the internet. So basically, to try to expand that. Well, we know we have private and parochial schools as well. So we're trying to expand that. I actually had great conversations with Rick Brown, and I also said Nancy Pelosi as well as Jim Clyburn announced that they're really trying to put more infrastructure into broadband because across the nation, cities are doing digital divide. So we are doing something at the low level in order to deal with digital divide. I'm working with Digital C, where I provide low-cost equipment as well as internet access, broadband, high-speed broadband access in the Fairfax area, but that's only a pilot in one area. If we're going to be truly successful at this, we have to look at this just like we would any infrastructure bill and to make sure we have the infrastructure in place for broadband. Last but not least, with that, Dr. Dunn, for example, when you look at Opportunity Corridor, which goes through a very distressed part of our city, an abandoned part of our city, that whole corridor will have bays where they could actually put fiber optic wire. So when we do complete new street, we need to make sure that we have those kind of infrastructure tools in place so that when people want to run wire for high-speed broadband, it will, we can actually do that in some of these distressed neighborhoods. So it's a multitude of things we need to do, but I will tell you, we not do it without the federal government.
Yes. And just one suggestion, Councilman, you might want to look at the city of Detroit and their work around the digital divide. Actually, Joshua Edmonds, a young man that was here, he's now the lead administrator for the city of Detroit, working on that issue. So I could easily put you in touch with him. I've stayed in touch with him. He was with the Cleveland Foundation, and prior to that, he was a fellow at CMHA while I was on the board there. but he's doing some innovative things.
Doc, I would love to have that connection. You always make great connections. I will tell you that we've also been working with Leon Wilson at Cleveland. And also, I was happy to see the Greater Partnership, Joe Roman's open letter about 2 weeks ago, that he also outlined that this is a priority from the Greater Cleveland Partnership. So I think our entire community is starting to wrap our arms around divide and how we can provide broadband. But thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Councilman, we've got time, I think, for one or two more. You mentioned Director Thomas from the Cleveland Public Library, who's here, and he had a question for you. So, Director Thomas, if you'd like to unmute, that'd be great.
Thank you, Councilman, for all that you're doing. My original one was to ask you what was most stressful and then what was most inspirational, but I'm going to just stick to what has been inspired you the most during this period of time. You're always a man of the people out there in the community. You haven't had a chance to talk to them probably and get around to them as much as you would like. What have you seen that has inspired you?
And I'll actually take it in its entirety, your question into its entirety. The most distressful has been senior elderly that live in isolation, family members that are scared, that are very scared because right now they don't have a lot of contact with the outside world. So sometimes they just call because they just don't have any access, and that's stressful to me because they're lonely. They don't have a support system that they need to have in place, and this has highlighted that we have more of those type of seniors living in these communities throughout the area. And if anything, I think we got to wrap up, reduce their well chat, everything else. To be honest, which have been just people. Everybody's been willing to step up. Cleveland, whenever we have these types of crises, people get together and we kind of inspire each other. I have to say that, probably the most important work closely with the Alphas, the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity and Cleveland Clinic, as well as several other community groups like Fairfax Renaissance Development. When we all just came together and everybody's, did things from delivered groceries to pass out information to whatever. So whenever you stay inside and just works together has been inspiring and showing the best of Cleveland and show how we've been able to get through this tough time.
Thank you so much,
Thanks,
Councilman.
Director.
There were a lot of questions and comments that came in, so we will work to get everyone answers and hopefully have some responses in the follow-up email to our session today. But I'm going to turn it back over to Marianne Crosley so that she can do a little wrap-up and let us know what's on deck for the week at CLC.
Great. Thanks so much, Councilman Griffin. We clearly could engage in dialogue with you for the better part of the afternoon. So we may just have to invite you back so you can answer more of these questions. I hope you'll say yes.